Give me just one sec. Thank you for coming for my IDS talk today. The key thing about IDS is it's a nebulous subject. We're told constantly we should have them, and we're told regularly how much good they do for our business. But what do they actually do for our business? And in many cases, it's a nebulous answer that is difficult to answer, difficult for time and time again. So this is a story about how I got started, how I handled a specific subject. Like all good stories, it has a goofy remote and starts with not enough time, not enough money, and us turning into that. It's a question of resources, and each one of these are resources we find near and dear to our lives because we just don't have enough of it. Because people are constantly telling us we should be doing more with our time, we should be doing more with our resources, we should be doing more with our family, friends, and stuff like that, when in reality, we have large sections of our networks and lives melting in front of us. And what do? So, like all good statements of science, it starts with a story. And this story starts with my friend calling me panicked because him and all his coworkers are getting upwards of 2,000 emails a day. And this is not a very big company. You're looking at a 10-person IT staff, 2 VPs in the mix, so with a couple hundred users, and going up to a few hundred users depending on how you do the math. So not very much company. Now, you put 2,000 times 10 IT staff times a VP plus an owner, and with not a oversized footprint, and you see this in the distance. Between 3 and 7 times a day, you saw just someone screaming down the hallway going, "Oh dear God, I think the server's melting." Not exactly what you want to hear, vote of confidence, as you see your IT guy sprinting by your office. And the worst part about this is, that's not, the users weren't the ones giving them trouble. Their boss was seeing this. Their boss was seeing this goofball in their basement burning all their money. Because when that server goes down, when those critical resources go down, how do you sell things? How do you get your clients to go, "Yes, you should trust me. You can't talk to me. You can't, listen to me. I can't listen to you, but you should definitely send me a check." So, what do we look at to actually answer what an IDS is and why system admins are running screaming down hallways? Well, let's look at what an IDS is. An IDS is, in its simplest form, a set of data that we can't read. It's indexed so we can find it, but we can't read it. And this magic sauce an IDS sprinkles in like a really disturbing seasoning at Thanksgiving, where you'd go, "Chicken's not supposed to be purple." No. Bad Aunt Susie. So what is the secret sauce? Well, the truth is, we don't care. The fact is, that's what we pay IDS providers for. And this is not a slam on a single IDS provider. Every IDS provider has had this problem with a client. Every IDS provider has literally squashed a business for a few days, and that's not just their fault. Sometimes, and I've talked to companies, and I've talked to the techs, I've talked to people who run the services and deal with many, many techs across many, many states, across many, many countries, and I keep hearing the same thing. Customers think I just plug it in, and it works. Problem is, that's not what happens. So, in this case, client plugs it in, lawyer goes, hey, we need to turn on all the buttons. And no one bothers to do triage. No one actually looks at the messages coming in. So when I showed up the first day and I went, hey, what's going on? I literally walked in the door as half their IT team left. It wasn't a break, it wasn't a lunch. They just went, no, I don't want to read 2,000 emails today with attached log files. So after I got them back in the building, or at least most of them, we actually looked at triage. If you pull up to a car accident, you don't go to the screaming patient, you go to the one who cannot scream. Because you don't know what's happening there. So let's see the patient that's not screaming. And this is what we found. It took us a few days to get this, but you have a huge chunk of external noise, stuff we can't even classify, and a large section of login fails, which make no sense, but they're just cyclical, and web services, which, okay, if you have a web interface, you're going to get web failures. People do stupid things with browsers. We all know this. And we all yell at them, but they keep clicking the button. So it happens. The question is, what are these failures? Why is there so much external noise? They don't have that much of a footprint, and there's no reason for it. There's no peaks, there's no troughs, there's no it's higher one day, stuff like that. So what do we do from triage? As a good book once said, don't panic, organize. If everyone read their guidebooks, you'll recognize the sentiment. So, divide and conquer. With external traffic, we found a huge failure. It wasn't that they were getting flooded, they were self-DOSing. They literally looped their VoIP server through their external interface and back into their network. How many random key combinations or character combinations can you get from saying hello into a VoIP server? That many. It was a huge win, and the biggest win of this overall thing is the fact that now we have nearly 25% of our work gone. Day one. I don't know about you, but I'd like 25% of my life back. So where do we go from this? Web services. Why didn't we do web services first? Because that wasn't the biggest threat. They were convinced they were being hacked. So when you're talking with companies, when you're dealing with them, when you're dealing with panicked people, it's not about always where the bleeding is. It's also about where they think the bleeding is. And this comes down to, how do you actually talk to people? Both these got looked at within 2 days. But seeing that I did this second, I got all the resources I wanted to do it. And it got done faster, it got done better, and people were calmer. And no one walked out the door like the day I walked in. And at which point, web services, we found bad variables. The app team did not clean their inputs on a couple of things. 99% beautiful code. Like, kind of code where it's like, you see this in textbook, like, give him a gold star at life type of code. Here, they missed one. Problem is, it was on a page everyone used. But what would you say if I could say, here's half of your workday back to actually do exactly what your boss asked you to do? They found out. Remember, 10-person IT staff. No one specifically does security. Everyone just keeps the company running. This is people's computers start working. People start getting calls back from IT. People start going, oh, IT is actually doing something because now my stuff is starting to work. So what do we have now? Now that we're past the triage and we've knocked out a healthy chunk of work, when all said and done, we knocked out a little over half. Those are the two major areas we hit huge wins at. So what do we have to work with? Like I said before, 10 IT staff. That's roughly 80 hours a day and 400 hours a week. What's the cost of those man hours? The funny thing about this is, and this is the part where it's a lesson in the human being. When I started asking these numbers, I just asked the IT staff and I asked the owner. No one knew. Because because you never completely know what your coworker makes unless you abduct his paycheck. So seeing that it was a pretty cooperative environment, they didn't abduct each other's paychecks, so they didn't know. So I started asking around, and only when I had no other option, I asked the HR department. HR department taught me a lesson, largely through smiting. And the truth is, I thank them for this. I thank them in the sheer fact that because I treated them like everyone treats us. We don't break your stuff. We don't crash the servers. We don't, pile on 50 emails in your morning. But we fix it. And when we show up, we apparently caused it. It's not our name on the from field, but apparently we caused it. And we've all been yelled at for stuff we've never even interacted with. That's what I did to them. And to this day, I offer my apology. When you're looking for critical information, when you're actually starting a process like this, and it doesn't matter where you're dealing with IDS, you're dealing with lawn care for all it matters. Actually take a second, look at the resources you'll need, and invite them in on the beginning. Help them be part of the solution, not just part of the, oh God, I'm going to be blamed for this too. And because I learned my lesson and I ate my crow, I got this number. Now, people love to argue with me on this number, but the number really doesn't matter. This is a yardstick for us to understand how we impact the business, because we all understand, well, if I cost them $1,000 today, that's 3 car payments. We all understand this. And that's what management understands. And as long as they buy in to the method you generated this number from, everyone's using the same yardstick. Everyone understands, this is why I spent an extra $500 on this. This is why I had to have Bob take a day working on this. And you have some unit of measure to actually communicate with them on. But don't let that number cripple you. Let that number simply be a means of translation between IT and non-IT. IT and management, IT and HR, IT and whatever. So, what do we have? How much do we want to spend on this? For most, it's between 5 and 25%. There's a few exceptions to this. If you're a credit card company, you're going to spend more than 25% in some respects. If you're, building hammers, you're probably not going to spend 25%. But this is a question that should be a conversation. In this specific case, my client chose about 20%, and that equates to about 16 hours a day that we have to work with, about 80 hours a week. And it's gonna be a process to get there. So how do we deal with the use of those hours? Well, we need some structure, and we need to tell people, I need you to do this area. We're all professionals. We all know what needs to be done. But because they had a 10-person IT staff and everyone did security, no one did security. No one went through logs. No one checked anything in the security realm. So they need some direction. I need to go to him and say, I need you to do security today. Or I need you to review these logs. And we also need to not flood ourselves with thousands of emails we can't read. Because I don't know about you, but I can't read 2,000 emails a day with attached logs. I just don't have that many heads. So this is the structure we had before of generally how IDSs work. What do we need to add on to this to give people the structure to move forward with? This is the framework I went with. We have IDS feeds a secondary check. Some IDSs have this, some IDSs don't. I put this in here so that people just didn't get thrown by it. We have our human check, and then we have crisis management. Notice those are two separate things. If you're spending all your time in crisis management, everything you touch will be a crisis. If you are doing the human check and your job is to clear the desk, nothing is ever a crisis. Oh, it's fine, I'll handle that tomorrow. And then the biggest thing of all, the rule sets. The rule sets, the act of updating the reality in which the software is functioning within and having it match the reality the software is functioning within means that you don't get the results you think you should get. You get results reminiscent of the reality that this exists within. So, as an old saying goes, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Or at least stop digging down. So, day one. We turn on email. We turn on the email notifications only for the external interface. Remember, we've already knocked out a good, healthy portion of those. But we still have 130 tickets just from this one category. We spend about 17 hours. People are getting the mix. People are frustrated. They're like, oh, dear God, but this over here is melting. And I kept having to talk to people. And this is, again, human element. We're not there yet. You weren't reading it yesterday, and you weren't reading it the day before. Why are you worrying about reading it today when you don't have the ability? So those two people went through 70 of 130, and we were down to about 1,300 and 1,350 alerts total. And we actually updated something. Before I walked in, they had never updated a rule. I'm not sure a couple people actually knew you could. And it's easy to take that as a slam, but it's not. It's a question of no one had given these people structure to move forward on, so because everyone did security, no one did security, and no one actually looked at, oh, that runs on rules. Cool. And this is the bottom line is the only line your management will actually read of your report. I spent this much today. Because I'm saying I spent this much today, he has a concept of how much resources I'm using. Because in order to find a benefit to a cost, you have to know the cost. So I gave him a number and let him understand how I came up with it. Day two. Everyone's a little frustrated because, 1,300 results. Everyone's a little bit annoyed. They didn't even get through the entire category. They only went through about 70 of one little sliver, in this case being external interfaces, external noise. And those external interfaces generated 114 tickets. Notice, that's a smaller number. We're moving something. Those two rules had an effect. Who would give something to get back 2 hours of their day at work? I mean, you don't get to go home, but you get to not stay late. You get to know that, oh, tomorrow there's not going to be something to fall on me, like an avalanche of paperwork I didn't know existed. And that number is getting smaller. Because that number is getting smaller, people start calming down and people start reading more. But we didn't get any rule updates. So in this scenario, in this one-day scenario, we have a company that feels really good about something. Oh, we've got some numbers down. But there's no long-term gain. And that's what we need to pay attention to. This is not a race won by touchdowns. This is a race run by mixing sports analogies and inches. And again, I have a cost to give. And I keep hitting the wrong button. The day 3. Again, external interfaces. That number gets smaller. We're almost through them. We get the rule updates are having an additional benefit. Even 2 days later, it's cumulative. And we get a rule update. This is the win. This is the line we need to listen to. Our guys that we're putting on the front lines, the guys who are frustrated and buried by too much work and too little time to do it in, they're going to pay for the stuff above it, and management is going to pay for attention to the stuff below it. We paid $1,118.72 for one rule update. There's our cost benefit. Management sees progress, but that's 16 hours. We used our entire daily allotment, and we're still not through it. But we're getting there. And again, inches matter. Day 4. Other things go wrong. The reason I have this slide in here is not so that I can show that we're making improvements. To say that one day where you don't, get to that end zone is not a loss. We don't get to work in perfect worlds. We show up when stuff goes wrong, as far as people see. Part of that is we need to stay out of the way of the business, and that's what they was. We need to be enablers, in short. Alerts went up. But again, this is not a bad thing. It just means that reality happens. Also, good things can happen. Because even at 14 hours, we still got 2 rule updates. And 1 rule update, 2 rule updates. This sounds like small numbers. But if you have the right rule update, if you have the right placement of that in your structure, it can bring back hours of your life that you get to spend with your family, your kids, your friends, that project you wanted to do. It gives you your weekends back. So, yeah, that's a single-digit number. That has multiple digits of impact on your life if you do it right. Now, management loved this number. Take the win. Let them see the fact that you actually care how much it's impacting them. Because right there, that could be 2 car payments for a lot of people. That could be a mortgage payment. And this is not an overly large company. This is something people can relate to. And notice, I dropped off the math. But you can always add it back in for context. If you have a new person on the team, if they stop getting relevance on what it is doing. Now, day 5. Day 5. Again, we're just on external interfaces. External interfaces is the first hill to climb. Once we climb that, then they have a template to move forward with on those others. We actually got our work done. I told people to go for that long lunch. Yeah, there's other things to do, but you have to give people a win. You have to let people know that you're just not going to grind them to dust with the work. And this is where I'm talking more about the human element on this, because over the time I've given the speech, this is the part where people keep asking me, how'd you get them back in the building? Well, I talked to them. I talked to the boss. I told the boss, you need them back. Well, why? They left. You don't have a company, I'm sorry, but you can't run your services, and they're the ones who know how to turn the key to the kingdom. I don't know where all your resources are. I walked in 3 minutes ago. So let them have a win. Alerts are down. Again, let them have the win. Be happy. And again, 2 rule updates. That right there is another half hour you get back to your life outside of 9 to 5. What would you guys want to do with it? I know I have a long list. And cost. Now, management liked the number of the day before, but I'm in budget. How many times do we get to say that? Let alone, how many times do we get to say we're in budget on 1 day's worth of work? So, post-dig out. They hit a wall. I get a call 2 weeks later. The world's melting. They have 3 people working 20-plus man hours a day. They are only going through, 84 of 150. And 2 weeks doesn't seem that long. And, we're only doing, a few rule updates a day. But in 2 weeks, we're getting close to 10% of the previous errors. Because now, not only are errors not coming in, we can classify them, we can group them, we can triage them, we can, sort them and go, oh, it's this error, and wait a second, I solved that last week. And suddenly, you get reams of documentation that, and this is a different talk, but in short, we just dumped it into a wiki. Now they have their own research database for problems that's not, the guys down the street. It's not, oh, this guy, fixed mufflers and we co-opted that and dumped in IT information. And that's a real story, by the way. They actually have research material to move forward with, and when something goes wrong, they can actually say to their boss, we have a documented solution, and documented solutions don't always work. If something does go wrong, they can look at their boss and saying, this is why we thought it would work. It worked the last 10 times. I'll have it up for you this afternoon. I'm working on it now. Which is a completely different conversation than, please don't fire me. But they're not getting through it. They're way over budget. Management is not happy. And now nothing is getting updated because 20-plus hours. Who has any time to write anything down and update that wiki that was so helpful to them? Who had the time to actually go to clients and say, oh, I heard you had trouble with our web interface. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? Because we want to provide better service. They don't have time to go to the lady on the front desk whose browser's running slow. I'm blanking on the exact number, but it's something like 75% of intrusions are done by our people IDS, not software. So a software IDS does not replace people, but it can help. And you can feed that people data into your software data and your software data into people, and suddenly you get synergy. So, again, management seeing a number. Now, we can have an adult conversation where we're not just spreading around happy thoughts between people going, well, I think it's something like this. No, we can say, here's a number, dollars, cents, this is what it costs you. If they say it's, well, that doesn't make sense, it's cost me more than that, you can tell them, okay, what additional costs are you looking at? Let's update that number. Everyone ends up happier. Momentary frustration for long-term happiness, I will take every day of the week. Because I don't want to be the clown burning the money in the basement. So, this doesn't work. I'm a horrible failure, apparently. Nothing is working. Everyone's mad. So, what do I do from here? I plug in something. Most people understand this concept from things like help desk, where you have a huge thump of things hitting your life with absolutely little to no resources to actually talk to everyone. So, how do we stay out of the hole? We build a better ladder. And we slip, we climb. Round 2, day 1. It shoots up, 302 alerts. That's what you get from having one day's results and trusting them. Now, we use a tier system, and the first guy to look at him, which was a guy who was fairly novice, but he's a really good guy. He's good at triage. He gets through 98 of them. Level 2 gets through, finds looks at 5 of what he set up. And they got all of that. And level 3 got 2. Now, level 3 found a root. How many times does your IDS say, wow, you've been pwned here? In my experience, it's not that often. Usually they say, well, this seems weird. But you very seldom say, look here. They say, look around here, and you spend the next 3 days looking through systems and EXEs and going, why does, system have 13 S's after it? Fishy. So, and because people are actually having time again, and people are now having lives, and people have some sense of structure where they don't feel crushed by it, now we're getting rule updates again. Management hates this number, but they are terrified because they found a persistent root in their system that had been there for at least 18 months and had probably been there for upwards of 3 years. How much data can you pull from a network in 3 years? Because no one read any logs. And at 2,000 emails, I challenge you to find a person in this conference that would find it in that mess. Just by reading 2,000 emails. So, management doesn't see this anymore. They see the attacker as this guy. We're the guy trying to put out the fire and bar the doors. So, day 2. 240 alerts. Less, apparently. The 300 and some was a little bit high, but it is as it is, and reality is reality, and the thing for us is to move forward within it. Of those 240, first level got through 97 of them. Level 2 got 4 of them. And level 3 got 1. And again, we're having level 1 use 5 minutes per. If it seems suspicious, kick it. If it doesn't make sense, kick it. If it's something you've not seen before and it's unique, kick it. With a note saying, what the bleep? So that we can actually have that human interaction go, what information do you need? What do we need to update you on? Oh, God forbid we actually give, the frontline guy some training so he knows how much to actually spend on it and whether it needs to be looked at. So on this day, we managed to find a system with a broken auto login. You know that first page where we had just random login failures? How many of us sit down on a computer and go, oh, I don't want to log into this every time. Remember me. Well, one guy had done this on about half the computers in the office. And we didn't get any rule updates, but how many failed login attempts do you want to read today? And again, that number is going down, and the fact that we're actually finding stuff in our network, stuff that's actionable, stuff that management can understand, and we're actually showing the benefit and the cost. Suddenly, they can live with a ratio. They can't live with, well, I'm paying this much, and you're apparently playing Donkey Kong or something. I don't know. That's something they don't so much like. And day 5. Those rules, those auto logins that we kill had an effect. Day before, day after. That's 100 alerts across garbled messages through encryption filters of logging in. We don't have to read because not all of this is Windows. Some of this is some guy wrote a really neat MP3 converter or some crap like that. So we're not dealing with fully formed software all the time. So just because you get alert doesn't mean you can read it. So, that's where big difference between, 100, because we knocked out half of our alerts for this. And we're almost there. Suddenly we can say, we're actually paying attention to, what is that, 70, 80% of our network. And we found an SQL server that had an error in it, badly formed table. Took the database guy. I kid you not. I told him it was broken. It took longer for us to walk to his desk than him to fix it. How actionable is that report? How many days would he spend searching for a SQL error versus going, change this? And again, we're getting closer. Day 8. We're actually within budget. We're reading everything. We're not saying, oh, we'll get to that tomorrow. We're not saying, oh, I have to come in the weekend. Oh, dear God, my phone's blowing up. I'm sorry, Susie, I really can't make the recital. Suddenly, we have lives. everyone's not spending all their money on us. We're sane because our phone's not keeping us up till 4 a.m. going, oh wow, I didn't know 13 messages can make that tone. So suddenly, we have lives, we have sanity, we have money, we have, just about a picket fence from this story. But it was a story that was earned through the steady work and the gain of inches. Not touchdowns, not, we need to change the yardstick. Because that number, even if someone disagrees with it, is a number. It's a number they can move forward with. So what did we learn? Number one, always follow the money. This works for the oldest professions, not Wall Street, but the oldest professions and the newest professions and the professions that pay our bills, except for Wall Street. So we need to follow the money because that's what people understand. That's what the criminal's after. That's what the world of ours is lubricated by. This conference room, the camera I'm speaking into, the tickets we came here on, and the resources that buy us lunch are not free. Someone's paying for it. And if they're paying it all on us, how do we have incomes? Simple answer is we don't. I don't know about you, but I like actually eating. Step 2, be lazy. Laziness is not a bad thing when properly used. If your boss gives you 80 hours worth of work with 40 hours to do it in, do the right 40. If your employee is falling asleep at his desk, does it really matter if he's at his desk? So, do the right 40. Because if you do the right 40, the next week, your boss is going to ask you to do 79 hours. And the next week after that, he's going to have to do 78 hours. And just like those rule updates, they're cumulative. So, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're getting closer to getting that work done and being reasonable about it. And that's where those numbers and that's where those dollar signs are not absolute measures, but they do move us forward. And it's all professional quotes should have. You have to have the broken Sun Tzu quote. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. We do not fight against nice people all the time. We do not fight against, the guy that goes, ha ha, you found me, here's how you did it. I've never gotten a Christmas card from someone who pwned me. Although it'd really be funny. I can picture it now, just a little server going, look, a campfire. But never gotten it, and I don't think I ever will. And the beautiful thing about this quote, and the larger reason I didn't put the full quote in it, is it doesn't apply to us. We don't have the option of knowing our enemy. How many people are on the planet? How many of them have keyboards? That's our enemy. So, what is the only part of this phrase we can actually move forward with? We can actually know ourselves. We can know the fact that our employees are falling asleep at their desks. That we can know that our employees are spending their weekends, where our employees can know they're about ready to walk out the door because no one listened to them and they're getting 2,000 emails a day. He could have saved himself a boatload of money in just raises alone. Because those people I got to walk back in with me didn't walk back in for free. They walked in because they said, well, we'll listen to you more and here's more money. So we do get to know ourselves. And that's important to know. And that's what this process is. The process is we go from, oh my God, the world's on fire, to, cool, we get to have a weenie roast 7 times a day, to, oh, only half my world's on fire, to, oh wow, I get a weekend. That's a journey. That's not a stop, that's not a step, that's not software. That's people making a choice to make life better. And then, the biggest lesson of all, and the one thing that you should remember every time someone sends an email and every time you hit send, what is the point of sending an email no one will ever read? I say this in annoyance because I get tons of emails that I will never read. I tell them I will never read them. They won't stop sending it to me. If they're advertisements, we call them spam. If we're called IDS, we call them job security. But the problem is, it's not job security. It's hours and days of our lives we do not get back. So, we get to know ourselves, we get to be lazy, and we get to follow the money. And we get to do it for the right reasons. I'd love questions. How am I doing on time? Now, the hallway con is going to start in a few minutes, but most of all, here's my information. Also, my handle on Twitter is Sir_Arcane, and it pops up with a few. I'm Brian H. on that list. But most of all, this process is about people, and that's why this talk became an hour long, not a half hour long, because it is worth our time to care about our fellow man. It is worth our time to make sure not only we get to our daughter's recital, but the people around us. And the last thing I'm going to say before I get off stage is I'd like the Matt right here to come up here for a second. First time I gave the speech, I forgot to say thank you. And when talking about the human element, it's so important to recognize the human element. Research like this is not done alone. If you really want to do good research, you have to find a good friend and bore him in tedium. Don't shut up, and when he says shut up, give it an hour. But I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
So. I'll be around, and as you can tell, I just hate talking, apparently.